Hello and welcome back. And as I promised in the last video, I was going to do another one of the limit problems which you could solve by multiplying by a conjugate. So let's try. Let's say we had the limit as a tends to 0 of the square root of 3a plus 1 minus 1 over a. So we can look at it. The first thing, like I've always said, is substitute, try and substitute, but we can see that a tends to 0, so we'll end up with a 0 down here, and so we can't substitute on this. Um, I don't think I can factor either. I don't know an easy way to factor this problem, so I'll go with the method by multiplying by a conjugate. So I'll multiply this by the conjugate, which is 3a plus 1. Remember, in the conjugate, the sign changes, so it becomes 3a plus 1 plus 1. And whatever I do to the numerator, I have to do to the denominator. So that's the square root of 3a plus 1 plus 1. So let's multiply this out. So this equals, remember to write the limit as a tends to 0. And 3a plus 1 times 3a plus 1, since they're both in square root things, when you multiply two things that are within a square root but they're the exact same thing, all that happens is that the square root disappears. So it would be 3a plus 1. And then it's negative 1 times 3a plus 1. So, hold on. Put this in parentheses. It's plus 1 times the square root of 3a plus 1 minus 1 times the square root of 3a plus 1. And then finally we have negative 1 times 1, which is minus 1. And then this is all over a times the square root of 3a plus 1 plus 1. And I could multiply this a out, but I'm just not going to do it right now because we're trying to simplify, so don't make things more complicated. Try and break them out into bigger things so you can, that helps you cross them out, cancel things out, make them simpler. So we can see we have a plus 1 times 3a plus 1 and a minus 1 times 3a plus 1. So we can, those two just cross out. And so we are left with limit as a tends to 0 of 3a plus 1 minus 1 over a times square root of 3a plus 1 plus 1. Now we can, we have a plus 1 and a minus 1, so those cancel each other out. And then we can also simplify. We have a 3a up here and an a down there, so the a's can cross out. I know I'm doing two steps in one, but I don't think that's too complicated, so you should be able to figure that out. So this equals the limit as a tends to 0 of 3 over the square root of 3a plus 1 plus 1. So now I can try and substitute and see if I get something. I may have to simplify this further. I don't know right now if it will work, but I don't see anything more I could simplify. But you may reach a point where you may have to multiply by a conjugate again, because you see that there's a square root here and then the plus something there. But let me try and substitute and see if it works, and if it does, then I don't have to. So this equals, now I don't have to write the limit because I'm actually going to plug in 0 for a. So this equals 3 over the square root of 3 times 0 plus 1 plus 1, which is 3 times 0 is 0, and then you have plus 1 within the square root, so that's the square root of 1, and then you have that plus 1 outside. And the square root of 1 is just 1, so I end up with 3 over 1 plus 1, and that equals 3 over 2. And so that's my answer. I didn't have to use the conjugate method again, but you might have to, and you might have to factor, and there might be a whole bunch of things you have to do. So, but this is just one of the methods you can use to solve them. Remember, this method usually works for things that are, you see one square root, and then you see a plus or minus something else, and then, you can't substitute, and that's usually the time it works. So, yeah. If you have any questions, you can email me at utamatchboxman@gmail.com. And, yeah, that's about it. Keep watching.